Run to You, based off the song by Pentatonix. Chapter 2. It was you who was standing there. Wait, what do you mean you know about the Oberon? Marcel asked her. She looked down at the book tucked in his arm. There's a reason the library is my favorite place, General. No matter, Princess. Whatever you're thinking of doing, you're not going to do it. Can someone explain to me what's going on? Felix looked from Marcel to Elvire, but they ignored him. I'm to protect my kingdom, Marcellus. But I'm to protect you. Listen, Elvire. Cato already went into the storm, and I'm not about to lose you too. I command you, General, as your princess and higher up, to let me go and fight for Eucatus. She glared at him as she looked up to his brown eyes. He sighed with unsureness. He was sworn to grant and listen to the wishes of the Eucatian royal family. But this was different. He'd spent his childhood with this woman, and they grew up together. What was he to do if he lost all the members of the only family he had? He'd already lost the queen. Finally, at a loss for himself, he bowed hesitantly. Yes, Your Majesty. Without a word, Marcel heard her running footsteps go out to the balcony. He didn't dare look up fully as he saw a glimpse of her jumping off into the thundering clouds. You just followed my orders, King Felix. Marcel lifted himself and put every ounce of motivation to look at where she had gone aside. Please, Your Highness, follow me. I'll make sure you get somewhere safe. After making sure there was nobody in the ballroom, Marcel was the last to close the doors. He'd insisted that even his men get out while they still could, but Isaac refused. Then again, of course he did. Is that everyone? He asked as they started running down the great hall. I've searched and found nobody. Marcel caught Isaac looking out the windows that spanned from the floor to the ceiling. Looks nasty. Indeed. Marcel didn't have to look to know what was out there. He let his imagination do the work for him. Is the princess safe? Isaac questioned. As is the king. Isaac waited for them to reach the palace's entrance hall before he said anything else. They both sat up on the steps of one of the staircases up to the throne room. A staircase on either side, floored with red carpet, led up to it, while the door below it led to a series of halls throughout the castle. 2 doors on either side of the throne room on opposite walls led to staff workplaces and rooms. It's not going to do you any good to lie to your allies, Marcel, Isaac said while catching his breath. Marcel turned to him in all seriousness. What makes you think I'd be lying to you? What did His Majesty talk with you about? Isaac asked, as if he were ignoring Marcel. Nothing important? Military strategies. Isaac looked down at the Oberon in Marcel's arm. He put his hand up to his chin and ran it down his beard. Whatever you need from me, General, I'm willing to provide. Thank you, Isaac. Even if it's to help you do something crazy. What are you? You've got a look to you, Marcel. Determination and fear. After some time, reading faces becomes natural. That's how I know you're lying about the king and princess. Marcel stayed silent. He didn't want to confirm nor deny anything Isaac said. He tried his best to keep a straight face. It isn't a storm, is it? Not in the current sense, he sighed, his breath back to its normal pace. It's something bigger. All the same, I stick to my previous statement. Crazy or not, I'll help you. Before Marcel could even think of replying, an echo went through what seemed like the whole castle. A woman laughing. How loyal, she said. Wholesome. Honestly. The both of them immediately jumped up and drew their swords, Marcel holding tight to the Oberon. They went back to back, and their eyes traced the walls, but no sign of anyone showed. Again the woman chuckled. Men are always so clueless. Finally, Marcel's eyes caught a dark figure opening the throne room doors. Show yourself, he shouted, Isaac turning to see. Noble, she said. It touched my heart, really. Though I'd hoped that the palace would have been totally empty by now. Her figure was visible as both of the doors swung open, but her pale face was covered by a black scarf. Even from where they were, both could see her glowing hazel eyes. Along her back was an axe, easily the size of her, Riding across her chest was a leather belt filled with pockets. Her black boots clacked on the floor, even with the carpet underneath them. She walked to the rail and looked down at them. Pity, huh? Who are you? Isaac shouted. Here, here. We mustn't be hostile quite yet. Everyone has an honor system. General, if I'm not wrong, you're meant to follow the orders of any royal, is that right? She waited for a response, but only got a glare from the both of them. Her eyes rolled with a sigh. I'll take that as a yes, then. She jumped up and landed on the stone rail, walking along it slowly and with ease to the left staircase. Well, it just so happens that I'm a royal. Does that, then, mean you must obey me? She asked as if she were a child trying to understand something. You're the Fairy Queen, Marcel realized. The grip on the handle of his sword only got tighter. I gather not all men are idiots, then. Yes. With a quick hop, she slid down the rail, and without missing a beat, Marcel ran up to the bottom of it and swung at her as she reached it, but she jumped up. He didn't hear her land behind him. Odd, until he saw why. When he turned back, she was in the air, clear and black-tinted wings behind her. They looked like stained glass, but had the delicacy of a butterfly and the shine of silver. Well, I'll be, Isaac remarked as he stared upward at her. She laughed a bit, dropping down lower as her voice got airy and light, almost wholesome. I like the older ones. They always have the best things to say. You're a coward not to fight, and you're one to provoke. She snapped back quickly at Marcel. Under different circumstances, I'm sure we could have been friends, but then your silly girlfriend came to attack me. Really thought you Hades would be different from the other kingdoms, since you pride yourselves on peace, but here we are. Where is she? Marcel interrupted. Answer me. He took a hard step to her, but she didn't react, only gave him a rude look. Manners, gentlemen, manners when speaking to a lady. You're no lady if I've ever seen one. A battle axe and a pair of wings hardly makes you one. By human definition, I suppose. She looked up and around. Still. She looked back down at them with what Marcel thought was a smile under the covering. She's fine, I think. You think? Isaac asked, taking a step back solely to be closer to Marcellus. Yes, I think. I never really know with humans. They're always so dramatic. Where? Marcel said like he needed to know right that second. Darlings, the queen called out to the throne room. Fluttering sounds came from its now open doors. Would you be my dears? She asked, as if whoever they were already knew what she requested. The fluttering got louder, and almost sounded as if little pieces of glass were tinkling together. Finally, the men saw what both of them knew they never wanted to see. Princess Elfire, clothes torn and dirty with cuts on her hands. She was tired, drained of all energy, and it was clear. Instead of walking, however, she was being carried by little balls of different colors, all the colors of the rainbow, plus pink and black. 8 types. Marcellus knew they were all dangerous. Marcellus, she said weakly. Elfire, Marcel turned to the queen. Treachery. You'll pay for everything you've done. Oh, I do look forward to it. But in this state, you're nothing more but a lowly mage. Take that book with you. Come to me when you think you've gathered enough strength to even go against me, and we'll see if you're right. Meanwhile, I'll be here keeping track of my new lovely toy. She looked to Elfire, then back to Marcel. With a flutter of her wings, she lowered herself right in front of him. Marcel could have taken her out right there, but something stopped him. He didn't know what, only that he couldn't dare slash her into a million pieces at that very moment. Marcel could see her now excited grin as she gently put her hand under his chin like he were a dog. He only gritted his teeth. Maybe it was fear that stopped him, but he refused to acknowledge it. You'd better hope I don't get bored with her, boy. Otherwise, well. She paused to think for a moment, then glared back at Marcel with a more evil sense. Maybe she'll die the same way King Cato did. Her smile only grew wider, and Marcel noticed he was shaking, and He looked into her bright eyes. Oh, is the big, strong general gonna cry? She laughed as she quickly moved back up to where she was. Leave and return when you've got something good to show me. Suddenly, a storm started to form around them. Winds blew from nowhere, and swirling clouds gave them a run for their money. The great doors separating the outside from the inside opened, and the dark and dusty clouds lifted them off the ground, spinning them around as if they were in a tornado. Marcel held tight to the Oberon and sheathed his sword as to not accidentally hit Isaac with it. Isaac did the same, and they kept their eyes on each other until the winds died down. Both of the men were thrown into the ground, and Marcel felt dirt beneath him. When the clouds cleared and the dust settled, they were in a field in what looked like the middle of nowhere. In mere seconds. Marcel then spotted Isaac standing up and brushing himself off as the clouds disappeared, the sky still dark and looming of morning, though the sun was not shown through the thickness of the atmosphere. Marcel scrambled to his feet and went to Isaac. Any idea where we are? He asked. None. Isaac looked around, but the only things surrounding them were plains of patchy long grass and wet and dry soil. Look. He pointed in the opposite direction. Smoke. They started walking in the direction where they saw dark smoke coming from what seemed like a house. A small clay cottage was visible when they got close, and when they were only mere yards away, they saw someone outside of it, sitting and cooking in a pan what looked like eggs. Hello? Marcel approached the person. Who looked up at them was an old woman with white hair tucked under her robe's hood. It was made out of old brown fabric, but it seemed to fit her perfectly. Yes. How can I help you, gentlemen? She eyed their armor and swords. We're simply looking for direction, ma'am, Marcel explained. The nearest kingdom, if you will. The nearest governed land is Uverin, if you even consider that to have real law, she said simply. Marcel looked at Isaac next to him. They both had the same thoughts. Uverin was a trading market with a self-proclaimed leader, a king who called himself Hallowskull. If anything, he was a gang leader, running the biggest traders in the area. On top of that, nobody had ever seen him before. Not to mention that Uverin was opposite of Eucatus in Aleph. If Marcel's geography was correct, they were in no man's land, and it seemed nobody lived there but this woman. I shouldn't hope you don't plan on going dressed like that, dears, her scratchy voice warned. Hallowskull hates real government, and you look like men of interest. Say, who are you anyway? What are you doing out here? Sir Isaac Gorgonson, ma'am, Knight of Eucatus. Isaac bowed as he presented himself. The woman didn't look too impressed and turned to Marcel. And you, young man? General Marcellus Cadell of Eucatus. And you might be? Her demeanor quickly changed. Real royal guards next to my dwelling? Well, I'll be a crazy woman. She stood up, and Marcel realized she was shorter than he thought she was. With a hunch in her back and a smile of her yellow teeth, she introduced herself. Josephine Kashirma, but you can call me Josie. Now, if you're heading to Uverin, you simply must get changed. Would you like to stay for breakfast? I've got chicken eggs and potatoes cooking. She started wobbling away from her small fire and into the entrance of the house, the brick patio by her doorless opening covered by clay walls across and to the side of it, making a sort of spot of shade. Plus, I've some of my dearly departed husband's gold clothes. I'm sure they'll fit nicely on you young gentlemen. They looked at each other. Then, with a shrug, Marcel entered the small clay house. Inside, Josie was getting birdseed from off the shelf. When she moved out of the way of the corner, Marcel saw a chicken in a nest on top of a small wooden box. The chicken turned its head to look at them and started getting a bit agitated with small noises. Hush, Benedict. I'm getting your food now, you lazy bird. Please, boys, take a seat. Josie gestured to the small table in the middle of the single-roomed cottage. A cabinet was next to Marcel, a coat rack next to Isaac, a bed next to the chicken's box, and a chest on the other side of the cabinet. Josie watched them as they sat down on small stools. Thank you for inviting us in, Miss Josie, Marcel said. No problem, my boy. I rarely get company anyway. She took a handful of the birdseed and threw it on the ground behind Isaac. The chicken jumped up from its nest and pecked at the ground. Now let's see if I have anything for you. After breakfast, the two got changed into common clothes and got a large basket to carry all their armor. Josie had given them cover robes of brown fabric like hers to hide their swords and knives, a bit of food for the journey, and a map to Uverin. Oh, look at you two, all ready for adventure, she stated as she finished latching the woven basket to Marcel's back. You've got everything, even that little book of yours, she asked, stepping back and taking a long look at them. Marcel looked at Isaac, who gave a slight nod, then back to Josie. He took her hand in his with a kind touch. Thank you, Miss Josie. We are forever in your debt. I promise you, if we ride to victory, you'll be the first person we build a nice living space for. You and your chicken, he smiled. Why, you're welcome, dearie. Now go bring that mean fairy queen to justice for me, will you? Of course, my lady. With that, they said their goodbyes and went out of the clay house, following the map west to Uverin.